across the globe issue that we're seeing.
Yeah. You're right. So what we do need to, however, see is how soon this gets resolved. Because at this point in time, as Rishabh was mentioning a little earlier, in about 30 minutes, we should hear about the next update from Microsoft on what exactly they're doing to fix this problem. We are not entirely sure how soon that will resolve the problems actually on ground.
Interruption between storage and compute resources, which resulted in connectivity failures that affected downstream Microsoft 365 services dependent on these connections. But certainly after this, we are seeing that there are various flights also that are being affected. We are seeing that already. The advisories are being issued by various airlines, be it SpiceJet, be it Akasa Air, or be it Indigo. And certainly you can currently also see the visuals that we are getting you from the airports here at the Delhi airport T3, right, where in fact even the display screens are currently, there's no data that seems to be appearing here, and because of that people say that they are facing difficulty. Over to you.
Right, Ishika, thank you so much for getting us, a sense of what it's like at the airport, and major chaos, as you can imagine, those screens just going blank, people not able to print out their boarding passes, and this is just gives you...
Right, so those were some updates coming in from Akasa Air and the issues that the customers at the airline are currently facing. We are about to be joined now with Mr. Anuj Agarwal, a cybersecurity expert who's going to take us through what exactly are the problems. Mr. Agarwal, I hope you can hear me. This is Vishwanath Nair from NDTV Profit.
Hi, yes, I can hear you.
All right. So, Mr. Agarwal, just take us through what exactly could cause such a massive outage. I mean, at this point in time, Microsoft's statement says there was a CrowdStrike update after which these problems have taken root, specifically on Microsoft Azure. So, can you just simplify this for some of our viewers here?
See, this is typically happening quite a bit now. I think every quarter there is an outage. And because there are three major cloud service providers, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon. Now, every time they are giving some excuse or explanation that there is a technical problem, which I do not think happens that way. Yeah. Because whenever a new update is planned, it is thoroughly tested. I mean, that is, it should be at least with a company like Microsoft or Google or Amazon. So there might be a deeper problem, and that may be linked to the overall global crisis which is going on. And there is a possibility of some sort of a malicious code or some malicious attack happening somewhere down the line, which is changing that code, which has suddenly started malfunctioning. Because no developer intentionally will ever write such kind of a code which can cause problem later on. So there is definitely a problem that there is a malicious code somewhere, how it has got into their system and overall in the update patch which has gone live now. So there is a serious problem, and that has to be really checked into it, and Microsoft must come clean on that.
Right, Mr. Agarwal, Smriti this side as well joining in. What kind of timeline are we looking at considering this is a global outage and a serious issue? How fast can we see this resolved?
I think it depends upon them. I mean, easiest is to roll back, because there is always, wherever there is a live update, there is always something called a rollback plan. So if something goes wrong, for whatever is the reason, so in spite of really getting into the reason at this point of time, keeping in mind the global impact, it is desirable for them to go immediately and roll it back, whatever changes they would have made. And that should not take much time. I mean, 30 minutes to 1 hour maximum be the overall timeline for a complete rollback and restoration of the services, and then check it out what is happening. But I don't think these companies are so much prompt, because the problem is slightly deeper somewhere down the line, and there is a big disruption internally. It is not looking like that, but it is that simple which say there is a problem with the update, then simply roll it back. If it is taking much time, which means there is a serious problem somewhere.
Okay. Mr. Agarwal, just to try and figure out exactly, and for our viewers, a quick update. We reported earlier that London Stock Exchange was facing some disruptions. So far, the Bombay Stock Exchange here at home has not really seen much disruptions that have been reported yet. We are seeing some other brokerages that are announcing these disruptions, but not really on the BSE.
Even some news channels as well that are impacted. There's radio, television services impacted. However,
I was just reading online that the 911 services in the US have also been impacted because emergency issues. Yeah, Mr. Agarwal, just this as a reference point. I mean, do you not think that maybe this rollback feature that you were talking about should have already been implemented, because this is becoming a big problem across the world now?
This should be the standard practice. I mean, this is taught in the engineering colleges, and all the programmers are knowing about it.
Yeah.
Why are they not doing it? I mean, it is for them to explain. It is highly undesirable, keeping in mind, as you very rightly said, the global impact and the kind of impact it is causing, inconvenience it is causing to the entire world. And even the essential services like 911 or other health services, flights, everything is getting disrupted. Microsoft is like a super computer power. So they must immediately roll it back to the earlier software version, and till the time they sort it out internally, whatever wrong might have gone, whether it is a malicious code or there is a serious technical problem or a misconfiguration, whatever you call it. So, I mean, it is laxity or it is the management failure, I will say. I mean, their top management should be responsible and responsive to this kind of a global situation. It is their fault and it is their failure.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Agarwal, for joining us on the show today and for giving us those insights. Now, we'll show you the user experience live as well from our newsroom. My colleague Puneet is joining in. All right. Seems like Puneet
is facing some technical disruptions. Yes. So we need to. We'll show that soon. But at this point in time, we just want to sort of give an update again. There's been a severe technical outage across the world, specifically those systems which are using Microsoft Azure. This has impacted banks. This has impacted hospitals, emergency services, brokerages. All of these services are currently facing severe disruptions across the world, including India, which is causing a lot of customer discomfort, of course. But more than that, this has become a bit of a security issue, considering that such a widely used system is currently facing these disruptions. Anyway, so far we know that 5paisa as well as Angel One brokerages that are based in India are facing these issues. Then we are seeing some updates coming in from major airlines. Indigo, we have seen something flash on our screens with regard to Vistara, as well as SpiceJet, who have all come out and clarified that they are facing issues. Apparently, at the airports at this point in time, ticket management is happening through manual services. The digital services currently are not functioning. So as soon as that is resolved, that's when customers will be able to take a sort of a normal flight out of the airport that they're currently stuck in. But that's what we know at this point in time,
right.
Smriti.
Right. So that's, we're also getting an update from the Delhi airport. They've also put out a statement talking about the issue that they're facing, and they say they're closely working with the stakeholders to minimize the inconvenience to their flyers as well. And they've also requested passengers that to get in touch with the airline or the help desk on the ground staff. But that's all that we have on this breaking news, but we're going to bring more updates as and when they happen. But for now, let's move on. We're going to talk to Mr. Anuj Mathur today, who's MD and CEO of Canara HSBC Life Insurance Company. Welcome, Mr. Mathur. Thanks for joining in on NDTV Profit. Talk to us. It's a pleasure having you on the show.
My pleasure too, and thanks for inviting me for this discussion.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
I'm going to start off with, of course, what are your expectations on this budget with regards to life insurance sector? What is the industry? What are the troubles that the industry is facing, and what kind of resolutions are you expecting this time?
See, currently life insurance industry is doing pretty well. If you see the growth which the industry has shown in the last 3 months, it's upwards of 20%. So we are doing very well. And let me also give you the background. See, life insurance is one sector which gives long-term guarantees, which contributes to the exchequer big time in terms of taxes, which contributes to the infrastructure development of the country. So this is one sector which is providing social security as well as helping the government in terms of infrastructure investment. So what we expect from the industry in return is that the tax structure should be rationalized. And few things will come from the budget and few things will come maybe outside the budget when the GST Council is meeting, they're deciding. So specifically in terms of my expectation from the budget this time is that there'll be some relaxation in direct taxes. We have not seen any changes in the limit, which is there for the life insurance in last almost a decade. As far as I remember, nothing has moved. So that is one relaxation. It will definitely help grow the sector. Number two, in terms of taxation of the proceeds, currently annuity is very, very important segment. I think retirement is definitely a very, very promising segment. And that is where we expect that the annuity should be made tax-free. Because what you get in annuity is principal and some bit of earnings on that. So that is another expectation which I have, that in the form of annuities, it should be tax-free. That will definitely help. And also some relaxation in terms of 1010D. So some changes came in last budget. Maybe if some relaxation can be given, that will really help the industry to grow. We are contributing a lot to the exchequer in the infrastructure growth of the country, and we'll be happy to further kind of participate, increase our penetration if these things are there. I think public is really looking for some of these relaxations, and we look forward from the industry for this help coming from the government.
Right. You just spoke about the taxation structures as well. In the last budget, there was some tax being now implemented on 5 lakh and above premium that's paid annually. Are you expecting specific changes to that? Should that reduce? What is the expectation? What's the demand there?
It's a request actually, because we saw this change last year, and because of which we have seen, particularly people who are looking at long-term savings. And by the way, as I mentioned, insurance is the only segment, life insurance, which provides long-term guarantees. So if this can be relaxed, that will definitely help, because last year we saw that there was some impact because of this. So it's a request that if this can be relaxed a little bit, that will definitely help in terms of savings also.
Right. And in terms of measures that can be taken to boost penetration of life insurance, of course, it's still very low in a country like India. What kind of measures can the government take, maybe in terms of distribution or through maybe, yeah, of course, going through self-help groups in rural areas, or anything else that you would suggest that the government can do here?
Right. So first of all, regulator is actually doing a lot of work in this area in terms of increasing the penetration. There's this Bima Trinity, which IRDA has taken forward, which is Bima Sugam, Bima Vistar, Bima Vahak. And I'll just take maybe 2 minutes to explain this. These are some of the initiatives which are meant to kind of widen the network of insurance. So Bima Sugam is the IT platform which the regulator is going to provide to all the companies and to the customers and to various stakeholders within insurance to increase the penetration. So that will help increasing the penetration. So rather than just face-to-face solicitation, people can actually go digital and buy insurance. So that is something which Bima Sugam will provide. Similarly, Bima Vistar is again an initiative where the regulator is trying to kind of allow various kinds of intermediaries to deeply penetrate into the country, because tier 4, tier 3, tier 4 cities, I think that is where at times the penetration is not that high. So that will help. And Bima Vahak, again, will help in terms of the product which is there being available to masses. And Bima Vistar will actually help in terms of bundling of the products. So I think these things will definitely help. One more request which I have, if we really want to increase the penetration, see, currently the GST is a big hindrance, particularly when it comes to protection. Protection, which is so basic, is the applicable tax rate is 18%. So that is where if GST Council can take our request, and for pure protection at least, if we can lower the GST rate, that will definitely help in increasing the penetration across the country. So these are few initiatives which, if we can work upon along with the government, will definitely help increasing the penetration in this country, where the penetration is hovering somewhere between 3.5%.
Right. Anything specific on the GST front? Currently, of course, that becomes a hindrance, the high rate of GST. But is there something in mind that you have in terms of that? Any specific number?
My request will be to kind of reduce the rate because if you look at other commodities, which are not even basic needs, they are taxed at the rate of 12% or even lower. So if protection can be at the rate of 5%, I think that will be a big boost for penetration. That will definitely help, because ultimately, who's bearing the burden of this? The burden of this is going to the customers. So if we can actually rationalize the GST rate, and it is completely the government's discretion what they think is the right rate, any reduction from here will definitely help boosting the penetration in the country. And my request is at least for protection, because that is where 18% is being charged, which is very high.
Right. Mr. Mathur, can you also talk to us about the pricing of these policies? Do you see that rising from here on?
Not really. I think, in fact, right now we are looking at the new product regulations, seeing how we can absorb the impact of this and not impact the customer. So there are various measures which insurance companies are taking to see that the burden is not passed on to the customer. And I think industry will be reasonable is what I feel. Early days, but I think in next 3 months we'll see more clarity. And hopefully, I think the customer should not be bearing the burden of it.
Point well taken. Thank you so much, Mr. Mathur, for joining us on the show today and for giving us those answers and the expectations that the life insurance industry has from the government this time, from the budget, of course. Thank you so much, Mr.
My
Mathur.
pleasure. And looking forward to the budget day.
Yes, definitely. And viewers, thanks for watching, but don't go anywhere. We have lots more lined up for you on NDTV Profit. Stay tuned.
Powerful driver of India's growth. The Indian economy, development of all regions, technologies and innovations. Inflation is moderate, investments are robust, more comprehensive GDP.
So, there is good debt and bad debt. I think there's debt which helps you create assets, which we would classify as good debt. For example, if you take an education loan for something which is truly a good program, good course, which is going to take you further, I think that's good debt. It'll pay back, it will take some time, but it'll pay you back well. The problem is if you over leverage, if you take too much debt simply because you assume that the future is a replica of the past.
As Vishal just said, there's good sugar, there's bad sugar. Your good sugar is going to be from your fruit sources and stuff like that, right? And of course then there's refined sugar, etc., which comes under your what's been labeled as bad sugar, right? So to come down and get into certain financial terms or bringing it into play, I would say budget for it.
एक ही लक्ष्य, नेशन फर्स्ट, एक ही इरादा, 2047 विकसित भारत।
When the whole day passes like a blur, the news just whizzes past, and you're trying to stay informed. It is our job to bring you news that truly
What's your personality type? No, I'm not talking about your zodiac sign and what that tells you. I'm talking about the science of the human mind. And there are several theories that have emerged over the years to classify human personalities. A popular one by Myers and Briggs talks about 16 types. But the reason I'm asking you to consider what your personality type is that it could have a bearing on how you interact with money and how you spend and invest. My guests today are Dr. Anjali Chabria, practicing psychiatrist, and Kiran Telang, author and financial planner. And over the course of this conversation on big decisions, we're going to be talking about personality types in money and also investing biases that you should be aware of.
Ever wondered how your quirks affect your wallet? Imagine your financial personality as 4 flavors. Are you the thrill-seeking, spontaneous spender who is always up for financial adventures? Or maybe you're the risk-averse guru, playing it safe with your hard-earned cash. Then there's the empathetic donor, of course, with a heart of gold who loves giving back. And lastly, the goal-oriented rational spender, the strategic saver who knows every rupee's worth. These types come from the Myers-Briggs 16 personalities. Think of it as your financial horoscope, but with real-world impact on your money. Knowing your type isn't just about fun facts. It's about mastering your finances. Whether you're adventurous or practical, your personality shapes how you save, spend, and invest.
Let's start with what I think will be a very fascinating conversation. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time and for speaking to us on big decisions. I'll start with you, Doctor.
Sure.
Let's talk about personality type, because this study that I read takes the 16 personality types and clubs it into 4 buckets, which is broadly into one which is more spontaneous, one which is more risk averse, one which is empathetic, which donates a lot of money, and the last which is more rational in the way that they spend towards a particular goal. Is it that easy to classify though?
See, human beings cannot be definitely classified into 4 types. Okay, but this is just one way maybe to explain to people what is happening, and these are some personality traits that may come together. You know, for example, if you're a perfectionist, okay, then you will overthink and overassess and overanalyze a problem. Okay, and maybe you'll do it even where your spending is concerned. So for everything, you will rationalize and you will say, no, is this necessary? Is this what I want? Is this something that I have to do now? Or do I have to do it later? And maybe if you have a spouse who will say, what is this? You know, let's just go ahead. You've always wanted to buy that car or buy that house. And here you are. You know, so depending on that, of course, one can make some assumptions. But everything is not going to be, you know.
So, okay, but for the purposes of this conversation broadly, and I understand that there are so many theories that you might be able to talk about. Let's break this down, first of all, into these 4 buckets, just to give people a sense. And I'm sure Kiran can weigh in on how to fix certain problems that might emerge because of traits that you might have. Now, the first one that I was reading has to do with people that are more spontaneous with the kind of spending that they might have. The example that I read in the study is you see a Jimmy Choo bag and you decide to buy it. You don't really look at your bank balance, you just go and spend. Can you talk about the traits that would normally be associated with this kind of behavior?
So see, either it is new money, okay, either there is impulsive spending which is happening, either this is something I've always wanted as a child and today I've reached the stage where I can go and buy it. You know, either I'm one of those people who gets influenced by things around me. You know, so it could be a combination of so many factors. Either as a kid, I've got whatever I wanted, or if you look at it, I've been deprived of whatever I wanted. So just depending, of course, on the situation,
There is peer pressure though.
Absolutely. And if I'm one who is on social media and who wants to see what are the bags and who's carrying what and how will I look, and I go around also with this group of friends, who every time they're talking about bags and shoes, etc., and again, I am someone who wants to be a part of this. I could be having a little bit of FOMO also. So there are so many factors, which get your confidence, your inner confidence, your childhood, and everything comes into play.
And there are a few aspects that we will talk about in just a bit. But from a financial planning standpoint, if you are an impulsive person, if you are spontaneously making decisions with regard to swiping your card or purchasing something, it's not necessarily a great thing for your finances. But then you can do that, Kiran, if you're taking certain other things into account, yeah?
Yeah, so actually what Dr. Anjali was saying is very interesting, the peer pressure and wanting to belong to a certain set and, all those things come into play. And when it comes to managing the money, what the kind of behavior that we see is that, okay, don't let the money stay in my savings account, I will spend it. That comes very often, people just want to take it away from their account. Otherwise, if they see it, they will end up spending it. So that is one part of it. Other side, we also see a lot of people just swiping their cards without figuring out how will they pay it when the due date comes. And that is leading to a debt trap. So those issues are creeping up because of all these psychological factors.
What's the fix though?
So I think what can be done is twofold. One is you create a discipline of first attending to your long-term goals. So keep that money aside. So you are assured that in future you have some nest egg ready for whatever goals you have. On the other side, what we can also do is keep a spending kitty separate, that you have this amount of money which you're going to spend. Nobody's going to ask you anything about it and you're happy about it. So both ways, whatever works with you, I think can be a good idea, so that you're not guilty about that spending and you don't end up in trouble, either in the short term because of the credit cards not being paid on due date, or in the long term when the goals come up and you're short of money.
I think that credit card spending is a separate conversation altogether because there's so much to unpack there. But spontaneous behavior, and you mentioned peer pressure, we'll talk about that in just a bit, but the second group of individuals that are more risk averse, you're more conscious, you're more frugal about the spending that you have, and this is where peer pressure might not jar you or affect you that much. What personality type can you describe?
So, these are people who may be overthinking and overanalyzing everything that they do. Okay, and such people, we also see that maybe they have a perfectionistic tendency in them, so they want to be all proper. They want to see whether you deserve to spend. They deserve to spend. Yes. So their self-esteem also may be a little low, because it's like every time, or they could be having a parent who's been very strict with them. That do you really deserve this? Do you really want it? Are you really going to need it? You already have 2 pens. Why are you buying a third pen? So because of that, they've been harsh on themselves also. And these are people who may also be excessive worriers and overthinkers. So they've also been, sometimes we see people who have obsessive tendencies.
But this is different from obsessive compulsive.
No. This is just a personality type. That you're obsessing about everything. And combine that with a low self-esteem. And then you say, no, and they learn to delay their impulses.
Which is not necessarily a terrible thing, but then too far or too much of a good thing, right?
Yeah, no. So what happens with such people is that they're constantly depriving themselves or putting it off to a later date. I'll do this, I'll buy myself a car only when I have done this, only if I do this. Or even if they buy things, they will not use it. It'll just be lying there waiting for that perfect day.
So I do have a question about the personal finance angle of this, but before we get to that, I want to ask about this because these are tendencies that people have based on their personality type, and very often you have very little control over these things, right? How do you fix that? Because this can either one be a symptom of certain issues that you might be facing, or it may be a precursor to bigger issues down the line. So is identifying it the first step of the problem?
Absolutely. And that is why mental health and mental health professionals come into the picture. Psychologists, a lot of people are coming in for therapy these days because they are either identifying these issues themselves, or their friends bring it up, or your relationship. And today friends are like siblings. So when people bring it up and say, but why are you being so stingy with yourself? That's when you start thinking, and then when you come to a therapist, you sit with them and understand what is your personality type. Or on the other hand, if you're someone who just sees something and impulsively you buy it, whether you can afford it or not,
that is also a problem.
That is also a problem.
Yeah.
Because is impulsivity a sign of something bigger?
Sure.
There are some people who may be having symptoms of attention deficit disorder.
Yeah.
So for them, it's like what they see is what they want.
Yeah.
And even if they get it, they may just keep it aside and not use it at all.
And this is all, Doctor, I've learned this, so you maybe you correct me about this. This is all spectrums that we're talking about, right?
Absolutely.
It's not, we don't look at this in black and white.
Not at all. And that is why you need a professional. So it's not just one symptom.
Sure.
Okay, it could be a trait.
Yeah.
And impulsivity could be a trait that is running in my in my genes.
Sure.
So I've seen my parent behave impulsively.
Yeah.
Now if I've seen my parent behave impulsively, either I follow or I do this opposite of that.
Yeah. That's true. So, okay, we've talked about spontaneity. This is the opposite end of that, and people delaying gratification to the point that it actually is harmful for them. And I would think that such people who are risk averse and worriers, as Doctor pointed out, would also be worried about, say, for example, investing in equity, where you're worried that your capital is going to be lost. As a result of which, I think people stay away from the equity markets to their detriment. Is that true, Kiran?
So I would bring it out in a more broader manner. I think this obsessive personality, what doctor was describing, would probably want certainty. Whereas investing is a very uncertain science.
Yeah.
You have a lot of assumptions. You're talking about so many years into the future where we don't know how things will pan out. Inflation is going to change. Taxes are going to change. Your own life is going to change. So all these changing parts together can totally change what has been put on paper as a financial plan vis-a-vis what actually turns out. So what is required in such situations is ideally tweaking your plan as you go along. So planning is more important than creating the plan. So the plan fails the moment it's actually on paper, and unless you keep on tweaking it, it has to be tweaked to your certain circumstances. Now coming to the equities bit that you spoke about, I think most of these savers who would want that certainty will be afraid of equities because there is so much volatility, so much uncertainty, and they cannot probably envision the kind of wealth that can be created on a long-term basis through investing in assets like equities. So they might want to keep away from that kind of investments, and that could lead to problems. See, you can't have everything into fixed assets which have a certainty.
Can I buy gold and keep it?
You can, but that is obviously going to impact on the long term, because gold again is an asset class which might perform for a very short time and it might not do anything for so many years, So there could be issues in future where you need certain amount of money, because inflation obviously reduces your purchasing power. And if you don't have any investment which is beating that inflation, you will fall short of your money unless your resources are so large that you don't really bother about the kind of returns that you make.
This is an important question that Dr. asked, because people automatically associate certain asset classes with safety and security.
Absolutely.
And that may not necessarily be the case. But to the point of asset allocation and what people should ideally follow, of course they need to identify based on their own risk assessment, but there are thumb rules to follow, and the easiest of which is what they say about the age, right? You talk about the metric of 100
Correct.
minus your age, and you're talking about that much associated, or the difference between 100 and your age being what you put in equity, right? Usually.
I would say that's just a thumb rule. See, circumstances are different. Now let me take an example. What would you say to an 80-year-old So 20% in equity, but that 8-year-old has a corpus of 50 crores.
Yeah, so it's
So it
practically
doesn't
impossible to do.
Yeah, it doesn't really make any sense to put that much money into debt. Probably what he or she is creating is generational wealth. So why keep it into low earning assets?
So what is the answer then, Kiran?
So it has to be done for each individual, each family on the basis of their circumstances. So what are they? Why of your money is more important? You know, why are you investing and saving? So if that question is answered, the plan and the investments follow. And obviously that has to be built in what of their risk profile, you know, and what is their psychological tendencies about what doctor was talking. So they are built in a certain way. They don't want to take certain decisions, or they don't want to go in a particular direction. That is fine. But as long as you're able to answer the why of investing, I think that puts a lot of things in place.
All right. But there are couple more personality types that we have to take through very quickly, because we also have to talk about investing biases. The first one has to do with those people that give their money away. Not many people have those around, to be fair, but then there are people who focus on others before they focus on themselves. These are people that are called empaths. And there's a last group of people that are more rational about the kind of spending that they have, where very specifically they say, I will only spend if it is achieving a certain goal. If, for example, I have to buy a car, I won't buy a car because I need to have a car. You know, I don't want to show it off. If I'm getting to work faster, it's serving a purpose, I will buy a car. What can you say about those two?
So see, when you talk about somebody being empathetic, okay, of course that depends on, again, which stage of your life you are on. Okay, so if, you know, you've kind of finished the Maslow's stage of roti kapda makan that you need.
Sure.
Now you've done with your savings, and then after that you say, okay, why am I saving all this money? Let me start giving it away. Let me involve it in causes.
Self-actualization.
Okay, self-actualization. So that is, of course, a certain part of the personality. Then you have personalities who are really scared that all this wealth is coming to me because of some good, so let me do good.
Sure.
And that's why I may give it for religious purposes or social causes, you know. So if it's coming from fear, you know, that's actually a negative personality. If it's really coming from self-actualization and saying, okay, I want to do good, or I want to donate 10% of my earnings, or whatever they may come to, you know, then of course
also be guilt.
That's
a lot of inheritors have that feeling that it's not what I have earned, it's only I have inherited, and probably I don't.
Yes. So fear and guilt comes into a little bit of, you know, these are people who suffer because they feel that, oh, if I don't do this, something
really deserve
bad.
This? Or did I deserve this?
Yes, you know, that they don't think they deserve it. And two is, if I don't do something, maybe something bad will happen to me. That's why I'm giving.
So I don't think that there's any real answer to this per se, but maybe setting aside a certain amount of your funds based on your requirements, and then saying, you know, this makes you happy.
Right, and rather than, you know, giving on an ad hoc basis, which might end up, depending on the amount of resources that you're looking at, it might end up bringing these people into trouble. So have a set group of people or causes that you're donating to, and you have kind of a plan for that also, a philanthropy plan, you know, whatever amount you want to give, so that could probably help in the long run.
And the last group, of course, is what financial planners dream of, is people who spend towards a goal. And so I don't think that there's any advice that is needed to be given.
I don't know, I mean, I would ideally like everybody to be rational, but I don't know whether that is possible, because see, they might be, like you were giving the example of the car purchase, you know, so they might be rational in one goal, but there could be other emotions at play for other things, like a bigger purchase, maybe a house. So you could think differently there. So I don't think any human being is totally rational at any point in time.
That's a fair point. Let's see. I mean,
I recently wanted to buy a house because there was a beautiful tree there.
Oh wow! Well, I would hope that my listeners and my viewers have the ability to follow up on goals that they might have that is similar to what Doctor just pointed out. We have to talk about certain biases that can crop up when you are investing, and that is lined up after this very quick break.
So, there is good debt and bad debt. I think there's debt which helps you create assets, which we would classify as good debt. For example, if you take an education loan for something which is truly a good program, good course, which is going to take you further, I think that's good debt. It'll pay back. It will take some time, but it'll pay you back well. The problem is if you over leverage, if you take too much debt simply because you assume that the future is a replica of the past.
As Vishal just said, there's good sugar, there's bad sugar. Your good sugar is going to be from your fruit sources and stuff like that, right? And of course, then there's refined sugar, etc., which comes under your what's been labeled as bad sugar, right? So to come down and get into certain financial terms or bringing it into play, I would say budget for it.
एक ही लक्ष्य, नेशन फर्स्ट, एक ही इरादा, 2047 विकसित भारत।
When the whole day passes like a blur, the news just whizzes past, and you're trying to stay informed. It is our job to bring you news that truly matters. At Profit 360, we cut through the clutter, the long street deals, finance and policy news that could shape your tomorrow. The newsmakers, the trendsetters, and the innovators. In 30 minutes, we've got you covered. So stay ahead, stay informed, and stay profitable with Profit 360.
Headlines you start your day with. What matters worldwide is now in the palm of your hands. Get ready to seize the day and maximize your financial potential. Stay ahead of the curve with all you need to know on NDTV Profit.
Listen to the voices of reason as they talk about corporate health and investing.
Welcome back. This is Big Decisions, and I'm Alex Matthew. We've been talking about personality types and how that could affect your spending behavior. But we have to also talk about investing behavior because biases can come to play here as well. And the most common ones are recency bias, which we're seeing very often. And I'm guessing some of my listeners and viewers have looked at the latest mutual fund data and seen how much money is going to thematic funds. I know that financial planners like yourself will say, look, be careful about those. But then ultimately they've been doing really well. And so recency bias comes into play.
So I think at certain points, financial planning is more about behavior management more than anything else, because we have to get the investors back to why did we plan in certain manner, what is your asset allocation, what is your risk profile. So if you move away from these core aspects, you will be tempted to get into things which are doing well now. So that is the recency bias. There is also herd mentality. So all my friends and my office people are doing this, so why don't I jump into it? It's not only mutual funds or financial assets. I would also say even in property purchases. I mean, I've seen people buying small commercial properties, because everybody in their office is doing the same thing. So, really, is it required? Is it a part of the big picture that you've created for yourself? So those biases are there, and you always need to go back to the basics.
Is there a psychological tendency here?
So, see, of course, there is a herd mentality, and, people always belong to a larger group. Okay, and then you have friends and you trust them and you trust their judgment. Also, sometimes, if I don't have confidence, but I think that, she is a more confident person or she is more intelligent than me, then I would like to go by her judgment. Okay, so that is where you're looking at a general population. But when you're talking about impulsive, okay, then there are certain disorders also which
Sure.
make you more impulsive.
Yeah, okay.
You know?
So fair point. But there are a couple more that I want to also hit, and one is your accounting bias, where you're calculating things, mental accounting bias, right? Where you're calculating things in your head, and it's not necessarily what it actually is. How does that work?
So people generally tend to keep certain amount of money for a certain purpose, you know, so that helps actually in a way to discipline also. It's a little difficult to think of money as fungible, you know, so you have a portfolio that is all money. So you can use any bit of that money for any purpose. But if you tag one bucket as this is for my child's education, you will be less tempted to pull money out of there. You know, so in certain places that helps, that you are not going to touch this part because this is for a certain purpose. Otherwise, you tend to kind of not be able to figure out when should you pull out, or when the markets are running up, you just want to withdraw everything and sit on cash. So that doesn't work. So there the mental accounting actually helps. But otherwise, when you're just starting off, say you don't have any particular goals, so then it is a fungible bracket. Then you don't really need mental accounting. It's just the wealth that you're creating for certain goals which you will realize along the way.
What about anchoring as a bias?
Oh, anchoring is a big thing because you sit on your losses because you remember that particular stock or that particular value of your portfolio, and you don't want to get out of it.
And I can imagine that that's a situation a lot of people are stuck in.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not only financial assets, even properties. Okay, my property was quoting this and it's not quoting that anymore, so I will wait forever to get out of it.
How do you get out of that?
So you just have to take a decision that losses have to be booked. If you want to move ahead, unless you take that loss and get out, you will not be able to utilize that money. That money is stuck there forever. It's difficult, it's very challenging, but it needs to be done.
Okay. Anything else that stands out in terms of biases that you would caution against?
I think herd mentality is one which is very, very important. We have already discussed that, and that really plays a big picture. I mean, whatever we are seeing in terms of even what happened abroad, you know, during COVID times, where retail investors got together as a herd and did certain things. So that plays a big role in your portfolios.
While it can galvanize you to invest, it may not always be the best.
It may not always be right for you.
So think about what you want. So thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you so much, Kiran, for taking the time and for speaking to us. Hopefully this conversation has been beneficial to people, because as you pointed out, Doctor, identifying a problem or potential problem is the most important step along the journey of getting better. All right, and that brings us to the end of this edition of Big Decisions. I hope that it was beneficial to you. Let us know what you think in the comment section, and also, most importantly, let us know what you would like to be discussed on this platform. Thanks so much for listening. This is NDTV Profit.
Powerful driver of India's growth. The Indian economy, development of all regions, technologies and innovations. Inflation is moderate, investments are robust, more comprehensive GDP.
So, there is good debt and bad debt. I think there's debt which helps you create assets, which we would classify as good debt. For example, if you take an education loan for something which is truly a good program, good course, which is going to take you further, I think that's good debt. It'll pay back, it will take some time, but it'll pay you back well. The problem is if you over leverage, if you take too much debt simply because you assume that the future is a replica of the past.
As Vishal just said, there's good sugar, there's bad sugar. Your good sugar is going to be from your fruit sources and stuff like that, right? And of course then there's refined sugar, etc., which comes under your what's been labeled as bad sugar, right? So to come down and get into certain financial terms or bringing it into play, I would say budget for it.
When the whole day passes like a blur, the news just whizzes past, and you're trying to stay informed. It is our job to bring you news that truly matters. At Profit 360, we cut through the clutter. The Wall Street deals, finance and policy news that could shape your tomorrow. The newsmakers, the trendsetters, and the innovators. In 30 minutes, we've got you covered. So stay ahead, stay informed, and stay profitable with Profit 360.
Why of your money is more important? Why are you investing and saving? So if that question is answered, the plan and the investments follow. And obviously that has to be built in what of their risk profile, and what is their psychological.
This is the big budget countdown, and I think the three key questions, at least the headline questions to my mind ahead of this budget. Will the government stick to the fiscal glide path or maybe better it? That's first. Will there be a rebalance from capex towards consumption, or can both be managed? That's two. And third, as is the case, I think with every budget, could there be a tinkering around capital gains which might impact risk assets? For the first two, for sure, and arguably the third one as well maybe, I think we've got the best voice to talk about that, Pranjal Bhandari, Johnson, to try and give us her assessment of what to expect from the budget. Remember, there is also an RBI move that has happened, which I'll talk about a bit later on the show. But Pranjal, great having you as always. Thanks for taking the time out. I hope all is well. What to your mind, or what is that big question to your mind that is center stage for you?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on the show. It's always good to be here. Now, look, big budget, and I think the government is endowed by a winning math in this budget. We ended the interim budget in February, and since then there have been big developments. It's got this huge bounty from the RBI dividend, 1.2 trillion rupees, 0.4% of GDP, extra money than the government had anticipated back in February. So it's got some extra cash from there. It's also seen tax revenues growing at a very rapid clip. Income tax revenue has been growing at 40% year on year, way higher than the government had forecasted back in February. So higher tax revenue, more RBI dividend makes a much, richer government at this point of time. Now, as you asked, how will the government use this revenue bounty? Look, my sense is that the government will split it. I think it will use about half of it for fiscal consolidation, which means it'll prove to the markets that, hey, I was able to bring down the fiscal deficit more than I had promised back in February. This is a very important step because it basically shows that the government is focused on macro stability. And remember, macro stability is very important if you want India to be a high growth country for many years. Not for 1 year or 2 years, but for multiple years, which is now the challenge. So to show basically that it's focused on macro stability, I think that will be one key point. And I'm going to come back to that in a second. And the second, my sense is it may use some of the money for more social welfare spending than it had allocated back in the February budget. Now, this does not mean that this is going to come at the cost of capex. I think the capex momentum will be continued. In the budget, they had increased capex from 3.2 to 3.4% of GDP, and I think that thrust will continue. It won't be raised further from there. And the reason it won't be raised further from there is because, pretty much, almost half of the fiscal year is over now. They can't suddenly raise spending rapidly on the capex front. Capex happens slowly, projects are slowly sort of, nurtured, and you can't suddenly increase it for the year. So I don't think extra expenditure for capex will happen, but some other interesting developments may happen in capex. For instance, a lot more capex being spent via giving interest-free loans to states. This is something that the government had announced back in February, but some of the details of that may get announced. So, that sort of, changes on the capex front. But in terms of rupee outlay, my sense is a lot more could go into rural, into housing, and into small firms, MSMEs. I think these are the three to which a little more extra outlays will be made. I'm not expecting any new schemes to be announced, just better funding some of the old schemes like PM Kisan or Narega. Anyway, a winning math in which you can do more higher welfare spending and also, more fiscal consolidation. Can't get better than that.
Yeah, and Pranjul, I want to talk about that the focus on macro stability being high growth, leading to a high growth country for many years. But just before that, what the one thing that is the two things that have changed. One thing you enumerated, better revenues, but it's a coalition government now. And there are two states which are asking for higher dolouts or grants, as the case may be, which could be much higher than what in normal parlance the government might be forced to give. Does that therefore make the hand a bit difficult that you have two state allies to whom you have to give, plus maybe a bit more of welfare focus, considering it's a state election year and considering the election verdict that has happened? So therefore, can the troika be managed well, that there will be fiscal consolidation better than anticipated, plus the push on capex as was budgeted in the interim budget, and plus these two things? Is the math strong enough for all of that?
Look, I think so, because just the amount of revenue bounty we've got, about 0.5% of GDP higher revenues than we had anticipated just a few months ago is a lot of money. Now, coming to your 2 points that you made, number one, what happens to all of these demands which certain states are making? The truth is, it is a negotiation at the end of the day. All of the payout doesn't happen in 1 year. This happens over time. It's a 5-year government. It can be spread out over the next 5 years. And also there are already many schemes that the government is running, centrally sponsored schemes, center sector schemes. And within that, some allocation, can be changed from A to B, from one state to another state. So there is a lot of wiggle room that the government already has within the scheme that is already running. So it doesn't have to really announce new money or new schemes to really, allow more funds to go to a few states. So I think, that is sort of one, important part, which I think can be managed. The other one is, states. I hear you that many state elections are coming up, but a lot of the welfare spending that states want to do are actually getting taken care of within the state budgets. A couple of states, for example, 4 states, have actually reissued their fiscal plans, and they have had a revised budget estimates in recent weeks. Many of them are doing different kind of social welfare schemes that are more attuned to their state. So I think the pressure of what goes on in state elections may not one for one fall into the shoulder of the central government. So I think the center will, in a way, be insulated from that spending pressure.
I think that's an important role, because I think important point, because for the center may not have too much of a role to play with their budgetary allocation in the state budget per se. I think it's an important point, Pranjul. Thanks for making that. You want to come to that point of the focus on macro stability and why the government will be focused on that, because it reaps rewards over a number of years and not just the current year?
Yeah. So look, I think continuity is going to be a big feature of this budget. And one area where the government has been focused for the last couple of years is fiscal consolidation. Ever since the fiscal deficit understandably went up in the pandemic, every year they have brought it down in line with the fiscal consolidation path. In fact, they have bettered from what they had announced. Like, for example, FY24, they were meant to have a fiscal deficit of 5.8%. They ended the year in 5.6%. So they have done, exceedingly well on those fronts. And my sense is that will continue. That focus will continue. That focus is very important because, I'm going to give you an example. Just a couple of months ago, S&P basically, improved its outlook on Indian economy. And it also went on to say that if India wants a sovereign upgrade of its rating, then the center plus state fiscal deficit should come in below 7%. Now we know that the state, is generally 3% or lower, which means that the center fiscal deficit should be about 4%. Now the central government has a plan of bringing down the fiscal deficit to 4.5% by FY26. And I think that is something is going to be focused on, but it may also give you an extra year that after 4.5, we will come down all the way to 4, which is in a way saying that we are ready to, come down in that fiscal consolidation path that is needed for India to get a ratings upgrade. So I think all of this, will fall in place. The government understands the importance of sticking to its fiscal consolidation path. In fact, a lot of the growth bounty that it has had in the last couple of years is because of this macro stability it has been able to maintain.
Got it. Pranjul, one word on capex as well. One point that you made, that one part is that now half the fisc has nearly passed. You can't just open the taps and expect it to be absorbed. But two, the base has moved considerably higher in the last 4 years. Would it be a folly to look at the incremental percentage uptick every year, compare it to the last 3 years average and say the center is spending less on capex? Because the country as a whole needs to be able to absorb the increased number in absolute terms as opposed to just the percentage terms, right? So how do you look at this, not just from a perspective of what will happen in this budget, but also what might get announced subsequently in February?
Look, the absorptive capacity of the economy, you have to understand, is not humongous. It only rises over time. Remember, about a decade ago, we were capable of building 15 kilometers of roads per day. Today, we can build about 50 to 60 kilometers of roads per day, right? It's taken us a decade to ramp up our absorptive capacity in the economy. So just increasing allocation in the budget does not mean that the infrastructure really gets built out. In terms of rupees, we have come a long way, at this point of time. It's not easy to have the same year-on-year increase in capex every single year. It just won't, be possible. The government itself is realizing this. If you see all of the allocation of capex in the last couple of years has largely gone to 3 ministries, defense, roads, and railways. How much more and how quickly can they ramp up? You really need other ministries to also join in, but other ministries will have to have viable projects, a proper pipeline to actually make most of this. All of this takes time. So the government, I think, has realized this. The second thing the government has realized is that, the implementers, mostly the states, and the government is now making more loans, state capex loans available to states, and then the states does the capex. And I think this is a winning stroke, because what the government, I think, is now trying to do is give all of these interest-free loans to states and ask them to do capex, but give it to them with some conditionality. Many of these conditionalities can be state reforms. So, for example, if you do these DISCOM reforms, power distribution company reforms, a big reform that our country needs, then, we give you this money, extra money, interest-free loans to do, capex. So I think innovation within the current outlays, revenue outlays, we'll see that. But the increase in expenditure and capex, I don't think it's going to be as dramatic going forward as it was in the last couple of years. Our best bet is that it remains constant as a percent of GDP, which means in rupee terms, it basically rises at the rate of nominal GDP growth per year.
Fabulous talking to you, Pranjul. But while we are doing this pre-budget conversation and getting these updates from you, would be lovely at some point of time next week or week after next to do a post-budget review as well of what you made of the budget speech. So look forward to that.
I would love to be there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Pranjul. And viewers, thanks for tuning in to this very important conversation in this budget countdown. Most important union budget in many years, and all eyes will be on how the finance minister builds the road to Viksit Bharat.
We are working to make India a Viksit Bharat by 2047.
But not without a fair share of politics. Will there be a tilt towards populism? How will the finance minister balance between welfare, capex and fiscal discipline?
We
get you the most comprehensive news and views on budget impact for investments, the taxpayer and the economy. Ride the bullish India wave only on NDTV Profit.
A powerful driver of India's growth, the Indian economy, development of all regions, technologies and innovations. Inflation is moderate, investments are robust, more comprehensive GDP.
एक ही लक्ष्य, नेशन फर्स्ट, एक ही इरादा, 2047 विकसित भारत।
Hello and welcome. You're watching a special conversation that we're having with Sandeep Kalra, CEO of Persistent Systems. Sandeep, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. From the look of it, it's been a good quarter. Like you mentioned to me before we got into this conversation, 17th quarter of reporting and you've done good. Revenues are up, EBITDA is up, margins have also improved. So all in all, from the look of it, things look good. But let's start with the demand environment first. Has that changed in between the last quarter and today? We've talked about green shoots. Are we actually seeing green shoots today as we speak? And also, do you feel a lot more confident? Do clients feel a lot more confident going into conversation and closing deals with companies like you? So a quick check of what's happening on the demand front.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me. It's been a good quarter for us, both in terms of revenue, profit, as well as the order book. In terms of the demand environment, as you alluded to, the demand environment continues to be somewhat the same. Although there is a bit more, optimism. There's a bit more, optimism from the perspective of rate cuts, etc. happening. People are expecting September, they will start to see some amount of rate cuts, and post the elections, they do expect things to accelerate. So there is some amount of optimism. I would say it is not necessarily converting into order wins yet, but the discussions are starting to, turn a little bit more positive.
Sandeep, when I looked at your earnings last quarter around healthcare, it held up quite nicely, but BFSI and high-tech segments were still not looking as good. From the way we look at it today, all those three verticals are firing up. Your BFSI is grown and so is healthcare. You want to chart out and pencil out what sort of growth can we expect for FY25 on those two verticals?
Sure. So we don't give forward-looking guidance, so I'll not give you percentage commentary, but I can give you qualitative commentary on things, which should help. So if you look at our, pipeline and order wins and so on, so the order wins have been fairly secular. Order wins have picked up on the back of generative AI-related discussions in software product engineering, and so we are seeing the success based on our platform SASVA that we are bringing to bear, especially on the cusp of enterprise software and private equity and mid to large, enterprise software companies. So we do expect that to accelerate our high-tech, revenues or ISV revenues over the next several quarters. Healthcare has been a very good journey for us. We have won multiple large deals in multiple customers. It has been a story where we have grown 66% year on year. Sequentially, we have grown, several quarters, double digit from a growth perspective. BFSI last quarter saw a fairly decent growth. So we are expecting healthcare to lead the growth, followed by BFSI, followed by high tech for us. And overall, the demand environment for us, I think, based on the initiatives we are taking, looks decent.
Hello, Mr. Kalra. Thank you so much for joining us today. I just had one question on margins. Now, we've seen, on an absolute basis, of course, they've gone up on a year-on-year as well as on a quarter-on-quarter basis. But it's coming at roughly 14% versus 14.9% in the same quarter last year. If you could just talk us through, you did speak about demand. If you could just talk us through on margins specifically, how are you seeing the current negotiations as well, and anything on qualitatively, or just you could tell us about the story as well on margins going forward.
Sure. So if you look at the margin side, there is 2-3 things happening there. Number one, overall, if you look at the last year, the environment has been tough. So while there have been larger deals on the table, those deals have been led by cost optimization initiatives from our customer side. So when they are trying to do cost optimization, they are looking at doing vendor consolidation as well. So a number of larger deals that we have won, we have done rebadging onshore, consolidated vendors onshore. We will optimize this over a period of next several quarters offshore. That will be a margin lever for us. So if you look at it, increasingly we have won against the bigger players in a cost optimization initiative, and we feel good about it. The revenue growth in a difficult environment is definitely a sign of continued revenue growth as the environment eases, and it also gives us the levers to be able to optimize margins. We have said aspirationally we want to deliver industry leading growth at margins which are equal to the margins that we delivered last year. What that would also mean is if we are starting with 14% in the first quarter, which is lesser than the last quarter, we will incrementally see margin improvement. And by the time we exit the year, aspirationally, we should be meeting the margins and setting the base for margin improvement to come for the next several years.
I'm just going to come in there, Sandeep, and this may be a little more qualitative in that sense, but what you indicated to me is that you've gone in and won clients and orders in terms of cost optimization. Are you now beginning to feel that post-completion of those jobs, the money that is saved is now going into your discretionary products? So is there a cross-selling selling opportunity that is probably contributing well to your top line, or could do so in the next 6 to 8 months?
So an excellent point. Yeah. So look, what is happening in the industry is this. On one side, there is significant buzz around newer technologies like generative AI and AI at large. Now, if people have to experiment with those technologies, leverage those technologies to disrupt their business models, be more competitive, etc., in a demand environment where our customers are also facing tough conditions, they're trying to optimize spend from certain areas, put it into next generation areas. And to your point, yes, it is a good thing for us. On one side, we are winning cost optimization deals, and as and when we give back the money to the customers in terms of what we are signing up for, part of that will also come back to us in terms of next generation initiatives, which are revenue enhancing based on newer technologies and newer initiatives. So yes, it could mean revenue growth from both perspectives for us.
Just one quick question on that. Have you lost any clients this quarter or added any big significant ones that you should tell us about?
No, in terms of losing any customers, look, we are always looking at long tail rationalization. So there is nothing that we can say we have lost a customer that we did not want to lose. In terms of adding any significant customers, look, we keep adding customers. But if you look at our order wins, we have announced certain large deals, etc., with some of our existing customers and newer customers. So I think overall it's a healthy journey. I don't think there is anything in terms of any negatives that we should be reporting. I think the order book that we have done, the deal sizes that we have seen should bode well for our future.
So just as we were speaking about order books, now we have mentioned that your top 10 clients share has been steadily going up over the past few quarters. We've also seen additions in this particular quarter on your TCV as well. We saw a big jump in Q3 of last year, crossing the 500 million mark. How are you seeing on these two parameters going forward on the top 10 as well as on bookings? We have seen increase from the previous quarter. How are you seeing the demand environment on these four aspects?
Yeah, so just to give you some numbers, our top 5 customers grew year on year 28% in the quarter gone by. Top 10 grew by 21.5%, top 20 by 19.3%, and top 50 by 19%. So if you look at it, our endeavor to grow our top accounts, if you look at our current growth rate, we are at 16% year on year. All of these categories are growing higher than that. So the initiatives that we have on focusing on our larger accounts is paying out well. We are also winning newer deals at scale. So from that perspective, the bookings are panning out nicely. And Q3 for us, usually, if you look at it, is the October, November, December quarter, which is the financial year end for US. It's seasonally a stronger quarter for us. So we are hoping as we are increasing our revenues, the order book should also proportionately increase with time. So all healthy trends and trending in the right direction from customer concentration, order book, and every other perspective.
Right. The biggest talking point these days is Gen AI. Most of us understand very little of it, unlike, of course, people like you who know this at the back of your hand. So it's mandatory for me to ask you this, right? Where do you see yourself? Where do you see Persistent? So forward-looking guidance over the next 2 to 3 years. And where do you see Gen AI? How much of it is going to... Is that going to be the lead indicator for the revenue growth or the $2 billion aspiration that you have for Persistent?
Yeah. So look, Gen AI is a subset of AI. We have been playing in the AI field for long, but Gen AI has definitely, been something which is transformational. It is not an incremental thing. And the fact that everyone is talking about you, including you on this call, the awareness is very big. The adoption is going to be much faster than even the cloud adoption we saw in the past. And so from our perspective, we are looking at Gen AI/AI in 2 vectors. One, AI for technology. Second, AI for business. AI for technology, we are focused on using AI to do product development, application development, etc. faster and making it more platform driven. So forward looking, Persistent should be looked upon as a company, whether we are doing AI for technology or AI for business, where we are helping enterprises develop new business models, reduce cost, use data to insight and action, improve customer experience. You should look at Persistent as being a company which will scale revenues based on a platform and human centric approach rather than being a human centric services delivery arm. So from that perspective, over the next several years, and please don't expect it in the next quarter, 2 quarters, our revenue per employee should move up. Our profit per employee should move up because we are doing a platform and services. So the platform should become something that can increase productivity of an average employee in Persistent. That will help us disrupt our own business and the business of our competition and so on. And overall, the market would also expand. So that's where the story is. It should be revenue and margin accretive over a period of time.
Right. So of course, from what I understand, a lot of the tech you're developing or AI you're developing is first being used internally to improve, utilization in that sense, and of course profitability, and then of course is also sold to other companies to do so. You've also talked about expansion, growing at the pace that you're looking to grow. Would any of it come in from the inorganic acquisition route? And if yes, would that be in the Gen AI space? So are you on the lookout for a good match for yourself or for your company?
Sure. So look, we have been doing inorganic part as well in terms of acquiring companies for capabilities that we want to get into. So in the last several years, we have incrementally invested in cloud-based technologies, payments, and so on. As of this point in time, from a Gen AI perspective, there are certain use cases which are horizontal use cases, which are applicable across verticals. So for example, contact center, infusing AI into contact centers is one big horizontal use case. We recently, announced a small acquisition in that space, and we'll build it up to bring in technology from our side, our partners like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and others. So like that, we are on the lookout, and we will definitely do both. We'll create IP internally as platforms and reusable components and bolt on these acquisitions, most of which should be smaller, tuck-in, capability-based acquisitions.
The food inflation has shot up. It is around 9.3%. Now what government can do is they can provide tax reductions on certain raw materials that are required by farmers.
So if we can see an increase in education budget, which can add to more in quantity and quality of education system in India, especially in higher education, and of course linking to the rural education and the primary education, then it's good. Would be a good balance.
My expectation from the upcoming budget would be to boost R&D spending, which is to about 1.2 or 1.2% of GDP, which is just as of now is about 0.8% of GDP.
So following the interim budget, this budget could provide greater insight on artificial intelligence and IoT, Internet of Things.
Considering that we already have a major chunk of the entire budget in defense, I would like to see a more focus towards R&D, because a lot of our expenditure is into imports and different machineries and vehicles from external countries. Why don't we take initiative and get them done in our country directly?
most important union budget in many years. And all eyes will be on how the finance minister builds the road to Viksit Bharat.
We are working to make India a Viksit Bharat by 2047.
But not without a fair share of politics. Will there be a tilt towards populism? How will the finance minister balance between welfare, capex and fiscal discipline?
We get you the most comprehensive news and views on budget impact for investments, the taxpayer and the economy. Ride the bullish India wave only on NDTV Profit.
A powerful driver of India's growth. The Indian economy, development of all regions, technologies and innovations. Inflation is moderate, investments are robust. More comprehensive GDP.
एक ही लक्ष्य, नेशन फर्स्ट, एक ही इरादा, 2047 विकसित भारत।
Well, we are close to the lowest point of the day, and that's not a great way to start the last 1 hour of trade over the weekend. But to an extent, you would argue that this should have been anticipated. We were stretched quite a bit. The global markets weren't quite doing as well. We charted out in the morning how Nifty's looked versus how some of the other global markets have looked. And in that sense, this 1% is acceptable before the weekend. Anyways, before the budget, there will be some bit of caution that would come in. This is what, 48 hours of trade before the budget. So in some sense, this is to be anticipated. It's not banks which have necessarily cracked as much. A lot of other sectors have. Just bring up the mid caps and the small caps very quickly before we get to the heat map and show you what's moving within the large cap space. A lot of pressure out there. Nearly 2% for the small caps. The mid caps will come up on your screen again, close to 2% as well. So it's not looked very happy, and the market breadth too has looked very, very wobbly. Now, okay, this is the market breadth, of course. This is, well, a very large yawning alligator mouth today. Nevertheless, let's get the heat map. A lot of red, very little green, as you would expect or suspect. Metals have taken it on the chin. Tata Steel, JSW, Hindalco, and commodities by and large, because you look at a BPCL, ONGC, Coal India, yes, there is pressure here. We spoke about how oil upstream has run its first course, and I think today it's not about a call on oil upstream. Everything has come off, but oil upstream too, which has looked very strong until recently, has come off in the session today. A lot of red otherwise, very little green, with Infi being a bit of a lone ranger in the top 4. LTIMindtree and HCL Tech are very, very flattish. Frankly, there's almost nothing else but for Infosys, which has looked in the green. But Harsh, terrible market breadth, and that's the picture really, because we now had 2 days of mid caps and small caps having a very stiff correction relative to the large caps.
Well, absolutely, you said it, Neeraj. The breadth is extremely stiff. You're looking at just about 18 advances on the Nifty mid-cap 150 versus 132 declines. So clearly the bears have it, at least in trade today. In terms of what's really standing out, let's pull up something like a persistent down 6.5% on the back of numbers. You're also seeing which is down roughly 6.5 again, and you're seeing KEI and some of the Via stocks also under pressure. If you can pull up a Polycab, that too is down 4% plus in trade. So some bit of pressure coming in. Of course, international business as well as margins seem to be slightly on the lower side when it comes to Polycab, and that trickling down to probably KEI as well. Let's pull up some of the gainers though, and I want to flag a couple of them off. Paytm up 4.5% on the back of numbers. The numbers maybe not great, but largely in line with what the street was expecting. And currently, it seems that anything that's in line when it comes to Paytm or average also will see some bit of reaction on the stock positive. AIA Engineering on the back of that initiating coverage note by BNP Paribas, up 2+%, just about 1.5% now in trade. So a bit of a cool off that we've seen on that particular counter. So those were the top gainers. Let me pull up some on the Nifty small cap as well. Chennai Petro, the big loser, 11% plus lower. You're also seeing MRPL down roughly 5.5%. Suven Pharma also seeing around 5% or so of declines. In terms of sectoral heat map and indices, well, the Nifty IT completely giving up all its gains now, trading absolutely flat. You're seeing the Nifty PSU Bank as well as the Nifty Bank down around 0.6% or thereabouts. The Nifty Auto down 2%. The Nifty Metal down 3.5+%. So that's where a lot of the pain is. 2.5% down on realty as well as energy. So that's the texture just in terms of how we are standing on the sector side of things. Let me welcome quickly on board Vaishali Parekh, Prabhudas Leeladhar as well as Aditya Shah, Hercules Advisors, to talk to us about markets. Vaishali, let me come to you first with regard to the technicals. First off, what's the sense? Where does the market go going forward next week, critical week with regard to the budget? How are you reading trends?
Very good afternoon, all of you. Yes, market is seeing some tension, and of course, we have been witnessing exhaustion right from morning because we opened strong, but we did not sustain at all. So right now, once if we see a break of 24,500, it could trigger further selling pressure going towards maybe 24,000 levels to start with. And likewise, even Bank Nifty, what I'm talking about is, well, if 52,000 levels break, there could be a further selling.
Okay, Vaishali, just in terms of your take with regard to the budget, how would you play it now? We're into the last leg of the budget trade.
Well, right now there isn't much scope, but I would say partial profit booking should not be ruled out because we are seeing the mid-cap, small-cap index totally getting into selling pressure. So I would say a little bit of stay aside.
Okay. Aditya, is this the market or select portions of the market taking some money off the table ahead of the big event, or this would have happened independent of the budget, the correction today?
Neeraj, the market was really very overheated, and I expected the market to correct because the market cannot have a one-way leg up. It will create a froth in the market where everybody will start to invest at any valuation. So this is a healthy correction. Maybe the budget was around the corner. That was a trigger. So as I've already been saying that there's a little bit of tulip mania getting created within the railway stock, within the defense stock, in the green energy stock, and to some extent the data centers as well. So a little bit of correction is healthy, and I will not rule out at least 5 to 10% correction, so which will be really very healthy for the market, and I'll be really happy if that happens.
Okay, really happy, and that's the interesting piece. You can attribute, Harsh, this to a pre-budget pullback as well, and some of it could have happened because a lot of people who made money before the big budget or before the big event. So maybe the budget is the trigger for people to pull money off the table and just enjoy the weekend.
Yeah, it seems like, and probably it's also that there was some bit of anticipation that post the budget there may be some bit of profit booking, which has now been preponed a little bit because everyone's probably anticipating it, and maybe it's also that. But Vaishali, let me not guess, let me come to your picks. Last 1 hour of trade this week.
Well, I would give one sell, that is Canfin Homes. That's showing some signs of weakness. So 870 would act as a stop loss, and my target would be 820. And among the banking sector, it's ICICI, which is holding very well among all the choppiness. So I would say ICICI with a stop loss of 1200, target 1300.
All right, excellent. Good to see some bullishness in the midst of all of this. Thanks for that, Vaishali. But let me quickly go across stock of the day. Infosys stock has gained on the back of strong set of numbers. We have Rucha joining us with what worked for the IT giant as well as brokerage views. Rucha, take it away.
So Infosys reported stellar results, as we all know, beat on all the three fronts, revenue, margins, profits up. But let me talk to you about, and guidance also, like, yes, that is important stuff. The company has increased its CC revenue growth guidance for FY25 from about 1 to 3% of band to 3 to 4% of band, while maintaining the operating margin guidance at 20 to 22%. But let me talk to you about the con call highlights which the company gave yesterday. The company definitely is seeing early signs of improvement in the US BFSI space. Now, BFSI is the segment wherein most of the IT companies receive the highest revenues from, and this has been a little bit of weaker vertical over the past 4 quarters. Even for this quarter, TCS had a weaker growth in the BFSI segment, but early signs of improvement for Infosys in this segment. But talking about discretionary demand, which has been under pressure over the last few quarters, this continues to be under pressure, is what Infosys management states. And mind you, the uptick in guidance is partly attributable to the inorganic acquisition of Intech, is what the company mentioned. So though the stock is up around 4% in trade today and the ADR was up around 8% today, but the management still says that discretionary demand is under pressure and they are not seeing any transformational projects or easing of budget by the clients. This is what Infosys is saying. But let me have a quick look on what brokerages are also saying on Infosys. Most of the brokerages are bullish on the stock with a buy rating or an overweight rating. However, CLS is the only one which has a downside of around 1% on the stock. Now, let me talk to you about what CLSA is saying. Strong deal wins and Intech acquisition will lead the growth ahead, and early signs of margin improvement as well under the new CFO is expected. Jefferies, however, also believes that there are initial signs of BFSI, and this will also drive the growth in the second half of the year. However, discretionary demand is still under pressure. So the talk of the town around discretionary still remains, Neeraj. This is what we have on IT sector as a whole.
All right, thanks for that, Rucha. Aditya, I know you are a bit constructive on IT. Talk us through that thesis, if at all that still continues to stand, and also just with regard to valuations, because we've seen a bottoming of the cycle likely, but we've seen a run up in valuations which has been far faster. So just talk us through valuations and what your sense is with regard to demand.
So I'm constructive on IT. My thesis is absolutely very clear. This year will be softish for all mid-cap and large cap IT per se. We don't expect the interest rate cuts to materialize, and that will mean that the demand in US and Europe will continue to remain soft. Having said that, the valuations continue to remain extremely aggressive, especially in the mid-cap IT space where there is growth. We've seen companies trading at about 40, 50, 60 times multiple. So what you should be really doing is you should be creating a basket of large cap as well as mid-cap IT companies. Within the large cap space, the number one pick for us would be an HCL Tech, where the dividend yield as well as there is a little bit of valuation comfort as you compare it with TCS or an Infosys. Number one, HCL Tech, number two, TCS, and number three will be Infosys. Within the mid-cap IT space, valuations are expensive, but we like KPIT, somebody like a Tata Elxsi or a L&T Technology Services or L&T Infotech Mindtree. Having said that, only in 25 and 26 is when the cycle is going to turn for the IT companies, and then they are going to do really well. So somebody with a 2 to 3 year view only should be investing.
Aditya, what's the rationale of buying into a KPIT, for example? 70 times earnings, that is expensive.
So Neeraj, there are services-based companies and there are product-based companies, and KPIT is one of the product-based companies which is supplying to driverless cars as well as artificial intelligence. The stock is really very expensive, but however, I don't expect the stock to come down unless and until the company encounters a severe problem, which I don't think is coming in the short term. So what you have to really do, the way around very expensive stocks which are really very good, is to SIP them over a period of time, or a period of 6, 12, 24 months, and then see how it goes. However, I agree with your thesis that the valuation here within the mid cap IT space continues to be very aggressive, because the growth is a little bit higher than the large cap IT space.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, no, just trying to understand why. And, Vaishali, just come in on this one, KPIT, because it hit an intraday high of 1906 or 1910. Since then, it's cooled off, but nowhere close to what some of the others have. What do you do with something like this?
So I would say right now, in a current scenario, it is in a very good trend, and we are just seeing a little minor consolidation. So as long as 1800 levels are intact, I think the stock is ready for a target of around 2000, 2100. So my view stays bullish, because this has shown gradual upward move. This has not really been disturbed in spite of the time when IT index on the whole was showing so much of weakness. It has just gradually held on, and we are seeing gradual improvement. So I think for a long-term perspective, this should be a hold.
All right, Vaishali, before we slip into a break, any other stocks which you find interesting at this point in the IT space, and your take on Infosys, please?
So Infosys, I think the trading target has really been met with. We saw a very strong opening, and it did not sustain at those levels. But I would still say that, yes, IT sector on the whole has shown a lot of improvement, and even on a weekly chart, it has given a breakout. So that means it can go into a little bit of consolidation to a sideways move. But now this implies that at every dip, IT sector, I mean, good quality stocks like HCL Tech, whether it's a Birla Soft or Wipro, all these stocks look positive to me at this level. And I think this should be bought and accumulated for a longer period of time.
All right. Well, time to slip into a short break. We'll, of course, continue to have advice coming in from both Aditya as well as Vaishali. Stay tuned. More on the other side, as well as speaking about some earnings reactions. Stay tuned.
Most important union budget in many years, and all eyes will be on how the finance minister builds the road to Viksit Bharat.
We are working to make India a Viksit Bharat by 2047.
But not without a fair share of politics. Will there be a tilt towards populism? How will the finance minister balance between welfare, capex and fiscal discipline? We get you the most comprehensive news and views on budget impact for investments, the taxpayer and the economy. Ride the bullish India wave only on NDTV Profit.
A powerful driver of India's growth. The Indian economy, development of all regions, technologies and innovations. Inflation is moderate, investments are robust, more comprehensive GDP.
एक ही लक्ष्य, नेशन फर्स्ट, एक ही इरादा, 2047 विकसित भारत।
Welcome back. You're watching India Market Close here on NDTV Profit. I want to quickly address the numbers flashing at the bottom of your screen. 16.8% in terms of margins for Ultratech. Revenues slightly below. I mean, just about 1% or 2%, not significantly below. But essentially, it's the margin number which is far below expectations. And the profit after tax, therefore, is well below expectations as well. So you're looking at PAT, which has come in just about the 1650 odd crore mark versus the 1820 crore mark, which at least our estimates were indicating it to be. So sharply lower. And the reaction on the stock, not significant, at least as of now. Also, just in terms of what to expect going into this earnings call for Ultratech, which will happen later today evening, just to try and understand how volume as well as value growth is happening within the cement industry. There's plenty happening in terms of pricing, not able to hike prices, and that's currently the problem with cement. Cement prices, in fact, down 3 to 4% sequentially, but margins really not picking up. We have Mihika joining us quickly with regard to the Q1 numbers. Mihika, what's your first take? Margin miss, what's your sense? Why is that happening?
Yes, so margin mix is mostly based on the cost efficiencies when you go to see. However, it's key to know that energy costs were lower by 17% on a year-on-year basis, mainly on the cost to reduce fuel costs, but raw material cost did rise 1% on a year-on-year basis, which was mainly attributable to the increase in the cost of fly ash as well as slag. A quick run through the numbers: revenues were up 1.87%. This was lower than the growth uptick in revenues expected as per Bloomberg estimates. EBITDA and barely any uptick at all, up 0.13%, and this is against the expectations of over a 10% EBITDA uptick as per Bloomberg consensus estimates earlier in the day. Margins did see contraction 36 basis points. Net profit was also fairly flat at 0.29%. When we talk about the kind of capacity additions, however, the company added 8.7 million tons per annum during the quarter. This was distributed across the nations, and work on the remaining locations as a part of the phase 2 of their 22.6 million ton per annum expansion announced back in June 2022 is in full swing according to the company. Commercial production from the new capacity is expected to go in a stream manner from FY25 as well as FY26, and with respect to the third phase of growth announced back in October 2023, major orders for the key technology suppliers required have been placed, and civil work has also been started at some locations. And when we talk about the business of Kesoram Industries, Ultratech grey cement capacity will start augmented to 199.6 million ton annum versus 150 million ton per annum during their last announcement after their India Cements financial investment. And this Kesoram industry capacity will also include 5.4 million tons of overseas capacity, which also expands them from a more than domestic basis.
Okay, thanks for that, Mihika. Thanks for breaking that down. Couple of quick pointers here as well. Power fuel costs have come off for Ultratech, and the margin miss is despite power fuel costs coming lower. You're also seeing some bit of an increase in both the other expenses as well as cost of materials consumed, and that's probably what has weighed down on the margins. Aditya, if at all you've had a chance to look at Ultratech's numbers, your quick take on what the numbers look like and what they largely indicate for the cement space, if I may ask.
So yesterday, Dalmia Bharat also reported their numbers, and the numbers were not really great. It seems to me that within the entire cement space, they are not able to pass on the cost escalations per se. And Ultratech as well, there seems to be a margin miss as well. So we need to understand from the management what is the EBITDA per ton per se, and what really happened within the operational matrix of the company. However, longer term, I'm really positive on Ultratech. It is the market leader, and it is continuing to gain market share. And as we know the news about India Cements as well. So we need to see the details of it, of the results before we can comment on it.
All right. Thanks for that, Aditya. Aditya, but overall cement, are you constructive or are you staying away?
No, I am constructive on cement. As we know, the government is pushing really hard on the infrastructure side of it, as well as the real estate recovery is already also happening. So there are two ways to play the cement sector per se. One, you can buy the large cap cement players like Ultratech Cement, and then you can play the regional players like Dalmia Bharat per se, where they are strong, very strong in their own specific localities. For example, Dalmia Bharat is very strong in the eastern side of it. So I am positive within the infrastructure space on the cement players.
Got it. Okay. Thanks, Aditya, for that. Let me switch focus to Polycab. The stock, I mean, of course, a bit beaten in trade today, nearly 4% lower. But on the back of numbers, we spoke with Executive Director Gandharv Tongya, and here's what he had to say on the company's outlook for FY25 and what we can expect going forward.
Last time when we gave guidance, it was in after fiscal 2021. In 21, our top line was around 9,000 crore rupees, and we embarked on a transformation project by the name of Project Leap. Under this particular project, the quantitative target is to get to 20,000 crore rupees of top line by fiscal 26. 3 years later, last fiscal 24, our top line was around 18,000 crore rupees. So in around 3 years, we have doubled our revenue from 9,000 to 18,000 crore rupees. In the current year, we will probably recalibrate our guidance because 20,000 crore rupees, we believe we should be able to either meet or beat our own expectations of fiscal 26.
All right. Vaishali, before I go on and try and address the fundamentals, some of the guidance is given there. Let me first try and understand the stock on charts, because the stock has tanked nearly 10+% from its top, and that's not too long ago, less than a month back. How is Polycab looking on charts for you, and what's your sense now on this one?
We are seeing some profit booking, and as long as 6,100 for now is held on, there's not much to worry. But if 6,100 levels break, then it will call for further weakness, and that's how I would see. It's anyway showing some signs of exhaustion, but 6,100 can be taken as a crucial support.
Okay, Aditya, coming to you with regard to Polycab, margin decline largely led by the mix changing export versus domestic. What's your sense now with regard to Polycab? This sub 13% kind of margin, you heard the commentary also coming in. What's your sense? Because stock certainly isn't cheap.
So as I said, the stock is not really cheap, and we've also had some corporate governance issues that have come up within Polycab. So I will rather wait and watch. The FMEG space looks really very interesting, because as the real estate space continues to recover, FMEG space is the one which is seeing the maximum traction. So Havells, KEI Industries, Polycab, all of these stocks are really very expensive to buy. So I will just monitor them. If 1 or 2 quarters of margin erosion continues, then the valuation could start to come down. So you need to be really very careful, observe these stocks for the next 1 or 2 quarters, and then take a call.
Well, watchful on margins, especially when it comes to some of these FMEG stocks. Okay, another stock that's trading under some bit of pressure is Tata Communications. Stock is down roughly 4%, or in fact, just about 4%. After reporting Q1 numbers, we caught up with the CFO, Kabir Ahmed Shakir, on the quarter gone by. Listening to his views.
Yeah, we're quite pleased with the good start of the year. Although topically you see a -1% growth if you strip off voice and subs. Our focus has always been on the data business. So the data business has has grown, albeit slightly lesser than what we would have wanted. But I think it's a healthy start to the year. It's grown year on year at 20%, which is good, helped by of course M&A that we did last year. On profitability, I would say we're quite again happy. Last quarter we ended at 18.6. I would like to remind the viewers, our ambition has always been to operate in 23 to 25 range, which we have been doing until last year when we did 2 acquisitions, which were margin dilutive and pulled our numbers down. But we then also advised the market that it's our ambition to get these back. So you see the first quarter in the year. As we inch up the margins from 18.6 of Q4 of last year to 20% already this year. So I would say we are, on the right track. Growth is of course the focus, and both India and international. We maintained our stated position that we are a market leader in India, and we would like to cement that. There's a lot of headroom to grow in international markets. Acquisitions that happened in international markets, revenue synergies will also see through coming in international markets. So there's opportunity for us to grow in international markets too. But as far as I'm concerned, both are important, both India and international.
All right, Aditya, your take on Tata Communications. Of course, the positive being that margins have started to inch back up as said or as guided by the management. What's your sense with regard to this particular counter, and how do you expect business to grow for this one? 20% plus top line, can they continue to do that?
Harsh, I don't track this stock, so will not be able to comment on this.
Sure. Vaishali, let me come to you with regard to this one on technicals. What's your sense? What should one do if one holds Polycab or positions in my apologies, Tata Communications at this point?
This is just one of the candles because of the result. But I think if 1750 levels break, then it's time to exit. But till then, I think it's in the positive territory, and well, it can act contrarian and go towards 2000 levels.
Okay, and you believe that that's likely, Vaishali?
Well, something has to move. So let's see. This can act as a defensive, because all this while when market was coming towards its high, we were banking on ITC. So ITC did its round. So let's see how Tatacom does.
But you seem bullish.
For now, it is.
Okay.
If 1750 levels break, then I would change my view.
Sure. Okay. Fine. So before we head into break, it's time for one of those again. The CII has put out its wish list for budget 2024. It includes a wide range of reforms, including ease of doing business, tax reforms, and land and agriculture reforms as well. Sanjeev Puri, the president of CII, said that green shoots are visible in the rural economy. Listen in to a slice of that.
We are certainly seeing some green shoots, and I would say not just us. This is the commentary you've heard from several players in the industry. There are green shoots definitely visible. But I think the question really to answer is that how do you put rural into a much stronger trajectory? And as I said earlier, the challenge has been on account of weather events. Fortunately, the monsoon, the predictions so far are good this year. So hopefully the crop should be better. That will provide some impetus to rural India. But on a sustained basis, I think the issue is about how do we build resilience in agriculture? How do we create more non-farm jobs in rural India?
Most important union budget in many years. and all eyes will be on how the finance minister builds the road to Viksit Bharat.
We are working to make India a Viksit Bharat by 2047.
But not without a fair share of politics. Will there be a tilt towards populism? How will the finance minister balance between welfare, capex and fiscal discipline?
We get you the most comprehensive news and views on budget impact for investments, the taxpayer and the economy. Ride the bullish India wave only on NDTV Profit.
A powerful driver of India's growth. The Indian economy, development of all regions, technologies and innovations. Inflation is moderate, investments are robust. More comprehensive GDP.
All right, welcome back. Thanks for staying tuned to India Market Close here on NDTV Profit. One bunch of stocks which we'll continue to have our eyes on next week and likely might also get, a bit of less attention given the budget will likely be the pharma counters. You'll have a whole host of pharma stocks which will be in focus on the back of numbers. Aditya, just talk to us about how you're seeing the pharma sector, both as a turnaround. Is there some more time to go, especially on the chemical side of things? How is demand playing out in your view?
There are two aspects of it. One is the specialty chemicals in the chemical space, and one is the pharma space. So for the chemicals space, I don't see the recovery happening at least until the end of this year. And maybe next year we will see some green shoots for most of the chemical players per se. Having said that, about the pharma sector, on the pharma sector, we have already seen good green shoots for the API space, let's say for Divi's Labs, to some extent for Laurus Labs, and also for Newland Labs. We are seeing green shoots for the CRAM CDMO space as well, where Piramal Pharma has reported good set of numbers. Syngene is not pointing to a recovery. For them, the recovery will happen only at the end of this year. So what I'm trying to say here is pharma and chemicals are a very diverse space. You need to look at it company by company and subsector by subsector, and then go and invest there. We are positive both on the chemical space as well as the pharma space, and within the pharma space, the API space, the CRAM CDMO space, and the diagnostic space is something that looks really very interesting.
All right, that's on pharma, but we also have Agam standing by, as he mandatorily does at 3, to break down the FNOQs for today. Agam, what are the FNOQs indicating?
Actually, there is we're now starting to see some weakness coming through. Remember that yesterday the broader markets were already weak, but today we're also now starting to see your larger cap companies wilt under pressure. That explains the Nifty down by over 1%, now edging towards the mark of 24,500. And remember that until this morning, there was a chance that we could potentially see 25,000 on the cards. Not only has that been denied, but now it does seem like we are starting to test 24,500 on the lower end, where there was a little bit of support playing out at the moment. A lot of unwinding, perhaps on expected lines, because yesterday we saw longs building up. And it's even in terms of the bank Nifty, that's where we see the index come off by around 0.7%. Not too much change in open interest. But coming down to your options market, and in terms of the range that we are expecting the Nifty to move within, it is exactly that 500-point range. And should we see the Nifty break 24,000 on the lower end on Monday, it most likely will not break it today. But if that does happen on Monday, then you never know how things could eventually pan out. But to talk about stocks, a lot of weakness across. In fact, there are very few gainers even on the Nifty 50. But shorts for Atul, Eicher Motors, MRF, Reliance Industries, Atul actually came up with a reasonably good set of numbers, but we are looking into selling perhaps about a profit taking there as well. Even among other stock counters, we're keeping an eye on something like Aarti Industries, Dalmia Bharat, where we are seeing long unwinding. Reliance Industries itself is down 2% ahead of its earnings, and as we move into Monday, that's the big number that we're going to keep an eye on that could potentially have more repercussions as far as the index is concerned. For now, the Nifty testing 24,500. Whether or not we expect more weakness, a little bit more nervousness in the run-up to the union budget, that's a wait and watch.
Hey, thanks for that, Agam. Thanks for putting that into perspective. Meanwhile, BPCL numbers on the screen and below estimates, and as a result of which that stock too has taken a beating. Not that this result brought it down. I think the stock was anyways lower, but I think the result has only exacerbated the pressure on BPCL. 4.5% lower now for that stock. Well and truly below estimates, well and truly below what they did in the corresponding quarter last year on most counts, if not all. And as a result, that pressure is showing. For all the bad press that some of these stocks have gotten in the recent past with regards to how the stock prices have been very choppy and volatile, I've missed seeing any very large constructive buy calls on the oil marketing companies, not because of just crude moving up, but even otherwise. Far cry from what used to be maybe a year and a half ago, or maybe longer. What's the call on a BPCL, and especially after the numbers they have come out, 29% drop in profitability and about 10% lower than what was estimated any which ways?
So rather than looking at oil marketing companies, I really look at the gas distribution companies or the upstream gas companies as well. It's very clear that the government is not able to divest any of these oil marketing companies, which could have led to a big trigger and big re-rating into all of these three companies. So generally, we tend to avoid these companies because whenever there will be an election, let's say, for example, there is a Maharashtra election that is going to come up in December, these companies will not be able to raise prices in that specific area, and then there will be a problem for these companies. So generally, these companies will be an avoid, and the massive trigger for re-rating of these companies is if the government is able to successfully divest BPCL, which is a very, very good asset to have. But unfortunately, over the past 2 to 3 years, the government has not able to divest.
That's true. Okay. Well, it's 4.26% lower is BPCL. Vaishali, anything on the charts for a BPCL? Vaishali, can you hear me? Yeah, please continue.
Yes. So right now, BPCL, we have seen a good consolidation right now. So we need to wait and watch, because if 290 levels break, then I think it's heading for a corrective move. Till then, it's just a range-bound approach.
Yeah, 3 or 4 and counting. And Harsh, the recent upgrades that have come in as well, usually keep an HPCL or a BPCL into account, not as much IOC, and understandably so. But Aditya is right. If the divestment goes through, it's fine. But otherwise, these numbers don't inspire. They will, of course, change every quarter. So this quarter, EBITDA margin is 5% versus 8% otherwise on quarter-on-quarter basis. These numbers will change. But the street, thus far, not taking the numbers too kindly.
Not at all, Neeraj. But, I don't know, maybe slightly on the positive side, elections are now past us. It's time to possibly look ahead, look forward. And maybe from Q2 onwards, possibly pricing change should maybe help the numbers. No?
Could be. I don't know, because of the way the election verdict has been, and because state elections being here, that's the other conundrum, if you will. But yeah, well, maybe Harsh makes a valid point too. The bigger one is out of the way. Who knows? Something may happen. But independent of that, which is open to interpretation, let's get in Mihika out to try and tell us what the numbers look like from BPCL. Mihika, disappointing quarter, I reckon, but what's gone wrong?
So mainly, let's just top up with the numbers. Net profit down 29% at 3,015 crores. Revenue saw 3% reduction at 1.13 lakh crores versus 1.16 lakh crores, and this is all on a quarter-on-quarter basis. EBITDA also saw a significant downtick at 39%, and this led to a margin contraction of over 300 basis points. Now, weaker results were expected on behalf of the companies, and that's expected across the board for OMCs, and the main reason are the gross refining margins. Now, what the entire weakness is coming, majority of the weakness is coming from the refining segment, as the gross refining margins for the company as well as the benchmark, which is Singapore GRMs, have contracted over the quarter, and this has signified a weakness in the refining segment of the Indian oil marketing companies. Furthermore, an expected impact of the ₹2 per litre price cut that took place for petrol and diesel in mid-March of this year itself. The impact of this price cut was also expected to kind of moderate the marketing margins from the highs that we've seen in the last 2 years. So these are the main highlights, and we'll get you more as we get more details.
Well, absolutely. Thanks for that, Mihika, for rounding that up. Of course, EBITDA declined quite steep, and therefore your profits are down nearly 30% on a sequential basis. But let's switch focus to the big boys. We have Reliance Industries set to announce numbers today, HDFC Bank set to announce numbers tomorrow. Let's start with Reliance. Of course, recent rate hikes, Jio also expected to perform better. Oil chemicals segments expected to see a weak quarter. That's largely the way one would look at Q1 FY25. Price hikes yet to take full center stage. Mihika, again, talk to us about what one can expect from these Q1 numbers from Reliance.
Yes, a weaker quarter is expected, and this mainly to the oil to chemical segment, as well as amount of slowdown expected in the retail segment. Now, when you look at the numbers on a consolidated Q-on-Q level, revenue is expected to drop almost 2%. Operating profit margins could fall around 15%, which would likely contract margins to around 280 basis points on a sequential basis. And in the end, net profit is likely to decline by 6.8% as per Bloomberg consensus estimates. Now, when we look at it segment-wise, first let's go to the oil to chemicals. Now, businesses like to see a sharp earnings decline, and this is on back of lower gross refining margins, which is something that we saw in BPCL as well. They expect a $4.7 per barrel drop in the GRMs, but however, some losses could be offset by the higher volumes. As well for Reliance Jio, the segment is likely to perform better. Higher subscription addition is expected at 8 million as per ICICI Securities, and they also expect a 0.6% uptick in the average revenue per user at 182.7 rupees. And lastly, when we talk about the retail segment, a slowdown in business is expected to drag profits down by 1% on a Q-on-Q basis. However, when you look at the operating profits, this could see a 3% uptick to 6,000 crores.
Okay, that's Reliance and the big boy ahead of the numbers, looking a bit skittish in line with how the market largely has looked. Vaishali, is there a trade on Reliance Industries ahead of its results? Is it looking weak, or is it looking close to supports?
Sorry, I would give it a miss. We normally don't play results, so I think it's better to avoid. Let's see how it performs, and then we'll take a look.
Okay. What about upstream at large? Yesterday, Oil India was down 5. Today, ONGC is down about 3.5. Reliance, as you said, has looked weak too. What do you... And then there is Hindustan Oil Exploration, which for completely different reasons has had a phenomenal run in the last few days. Vaishali?
I would say when market gets into the corrective mode, I don't think there is any exception to it. So I would say that, yes, I mean, ONGC also, one way, after giving a breakout at 305 levels, it's performed so well. It's gone up to 330 plus. So I think this is a regular retracement. So I would say these stocks are quite strong for now. Even Oil India is also very strong, but let's wait it out. I mean, today is one such day where we are seeing absolute selling in mid cap as well as the front line. So can't give a call on this.
All right. Thanks for that, Vaishali. Let me come to the other two, both HDFC as well as Kotak, big names expected to declare numbers. Well, HDFC, largely the focus will be on the margins. Expectations will come right up on your screen as we speak. Margin recovery, glide path, some visibility on that will be the key, as has been the commentary which came even in the annual report last evening. Also, with regard to replacement of borrowings with deposits, we had Sashidhar Jagdishan's comment on that as part of the annual report, and any kind of visibility on that. 21% borrowing, erstwhile HDFC Bank had just 8% borrowing. So as that unwind happens, and how quickly can that unwind happen, will be in focus. Growth concerns as to how long will growth remain muted for while this adjustment happens, as well as asset quality. That's largely going to be the expectation. It's asset quality expected to be very stable, but we've had a floating provision which was created in Q4. What does that do to the larger picture, and how does management view asset quality now at the backdrop of all of this is going to also hold some bit of an importance in the analyst community. Aditya, you track HDFC quite closely. Talk to us about what your expectations are and what do you make of the provisional numbers, because at least I have not had a chance to speak with you on the channel with regard to the provisional numbers. What's your sense? Very muted growth. How do you look at it now?
So Harsh, it is quite natural when the LDR is so high that the company will slow down its loan growth and try to concentrate on growing its deposit, and thereby after that it will again revert back to its 15 to 20% loan growth that we are so used to seeing. And that is exactly what Shashidhar Jagdishan was also showing, as you said in the annual report. Today, Mr. Shaktikanta Das, who is the governor of RBI, has also warned that there is a structural problem if deposits do not come into the banking system and go into the capital markets by the way of stocks going up. So the problem for HDFC Bank is right bang in the middle of the merger. There is a deposit slowdown, and because of that deposit slowdown, they are not able to accumulate deposit as fast as they had expected, which is leading to a massive erosion in the margins, where we have seen margins come down from 4% to about 3.4, 3.5%, and that's where we are. This quarter, the only concentration, in my opinion, should be on is the margin able to recover or not. If from 3.4, 3.5%, we are back up to 3.5, 3.6%, the market will take it really very positively and will bank on HDFC to recover its loan growth slow and steady. If the margin does not recover and it stays where it was, then we have a real problem that HDFC Bank will start to again underperform. So all eyes on the margins per se. All other factors are inconsequential in my opinion, because slippages anyway for all banks right now will be really very muted. Loan growth we've already seen is going to be muted because the LDR is really very high. So margins are the only one thing that we need to really concentrate on HDFC Bank this time around.
Okay, let's it's 3:20, that time of the day when we take closing strategies. So Vaishali, would love to come to you. I know it's a difficult one ahead of the budget, but if you had to do an STBT or a BTST at these rates, 10 minutes to close, what stock would you choose?
ICICI looks good. And
Vaishali, I lost you. Can you repeat the answer again, please?
ICICI among all the stocks still looks good. So that is one stock to my liking. And in cash category, there is one Navkar Corp, which is holding very well with good volume in spite of all the choppiness. So that is another stock to my liking.
Okay, holding out a couple of these names. Navkar Corp, interestingly, has made a seriously good move. ICICI Bank, second guest, another guest had spoken about the bandwagon of ICICI Bank in the session today as well. It's not done too much, but considering the circumstances, has fallen precious little. So that's to be kept in mind as well. But Harsh, ICICI Bank?
Actually, we've Kotak Bank's numbers coming out. So that one will also be in focus.
And HDFC Bank sometime?
Sometime tomorrow, both of them. Yes. So, but let's talk Kotak because we've spoken about HDFC. We're expecting to see likely at least the growth hold up for Kotak. We're expecting 16% growth on the advances side, muted 1% on a sequential basis, but nonetheless, it's also a softer quarter. So seasonality may also likely play out. Deposits, though, expected to go up by roughly 19% year over year. So that expected to remain healthy despite the RBI embargo. Not full quarter, but at least for part of the quarter. And therefore, you're expecting growth largely to be sustaining above the 15% kind of mark. That's the expectation. You're looking at net interest income, which is expected to go up 3% sequential, 14% year on year. Operating profit expected to be absolutely muted on the back of very strong OPEX, which the company will largely be expected to continue to churn out. Provisioning will spike up a little bit on a sequential basis off a low base, and profit after tax on a standalone basis is expected to be flat sequentially, or rather flat year on year and come off sequentially. Now, in terms of how much is the margin contraction, that will be the key question. We've built in a margin contraction of roughly 12 basis points. So from the 5.28% to the 5.16% odd, that's the expectation. We're expecting cost of funds to go up. Growth impact going forward on the RBI embargo will be a key to watch out for. What is that impact like, and what's the strategy going to be like going forward? They've had a good 3 months in terms of a thought as to what's going to play out, and cost and OPEX expected to continue to remain elevated, at least for the moment, and that probably weigh down on operating profit. Aditya, you want to weigh in on Kotak Bank because you track the banks quite closely.
Yes, again on Kotak Bank, they have got a specific problem themselves. Uday Kotak's boots are getting filled now, and we will need to see how the new management really lays down their strategy. That's the first point. Second point is, we've already seen RBI create an embargo on the digital acquisition of customers. What Kotak Bank is really doing, what are the steps that they are really taking in order to comply with the RBI problems per se, that is something that is really very important. I don't think the results matter in Kotak's case too much. They need to come out of this embargo of RBI very quickly within the next 3 to 6 months. Otherwise, the stock will again see a time correction per se. So those are the two most important things, the new management as well as the technology embargo that the RBI has really put in. What are they going to do about it? Those two important things are something to really watch out for.
All right, Vaishali, Kotak on charts, we've seen a bit of a rally over the last couple of months or so. What's your sense with regard to this one? I know you like ICICI, you've reiterated that, but talk us through Kotak.
So even Kotak chartically looks quite all right. I mean, we can see some little bit of retracement. So for now, 1770, 1780 would act as a good support for a fresh buying strategy. And once we see the stock sustaining well above 1880 levels, I think it's ready for a further up move going towards 1950, 2000.
Okay. Not too many stocks that are even trying to do any kind of a bounce back, if you will. So that's to be borne in mind as well as we start wrapping up the trade. Aditya, I heard you say that it's a correction that you would be happy about, a 5%, 10% as the case may be. What is the gunpowder kept dry for? I'm not saying what levels will you buy or what sector, but maybe some idea of a couple of things that you're watching out for, that if they fall quite a bit, then you might be comfortable buying.
These are large private sector banks, as I have been continuously saying. They look really very interesting. Then again, on the chemical side of it, on the pharma side of it, companies look really very interesting per se. They have taken a massive hammering over the last 1.5, 2 years. API, CRAMS, CDMO, diagnostic space. Within the capital goods space, the road makers, the EPC makers, they look really very interesting. I will definitely stay out of the defense, railway counters. They need to see a massive correction to clear out the froth where people are, as you were saying that day, IREDA went from 200 to 300 within a couple of weeks. So there the froth needs to get cleared out. Once that froth is cleared out, then you can think about entering these stocks. However, do not speculate or gamble within the railway stocks, defense stocks, within the green energy space per se, and the data centers per se.
All right, thanks for that, Aditya. Vaishali, we've seen a bit of a slip or a further slip that we've seen on the benchmark itself. How would you play the trade next week, especially where the Nifty Bank are concerned? Talk to us.
I think now for the coming week, I would say 24,400. The near-term support lies over there. If we break those support levels, we are in for a good corrective move going first towards 24,000 and then perhaps even lower. So that's how I would be looking at the stock, Nifty. And well, stocks, not much to say right now.
Understandably so. Vaishali and Aditya, thank you so much for taking the time out and being with us and giving us your thoughts. Really appreciate your time. Have a great weekend. Let's start wrapping up the markets. And a somber state of affairs really today. We've made virtually no attempt to bounce, and it's been a trending day lower, and we're closing almost at the low point of the day or at the low point of the day. In fact, we should get the intraday of the Nifty because I think we are at the low point of the day today for the Nifty. 24530 or thereabouts, right there. We are ending at the low point of the day. So trending day lower normally doesn't augur too well. But it's more painful at the broader end of the spectrum. So that's the second point to keep in mind. And then let's get the heat map up on the screen and just show you the quantum of pain. The mid caps, small caps, all of them ending close to today's lows. A lot of red, very little green. In fact, Infosys is just up about 2%. The ADR was up 8%, and that's a very muted reaction to the good set of numbers. But I think the market falling under its own weight, stretched beyond a limit. Look at commodities and look how badly they have fallen in the session today. So Harsh, pain points all round today.
Absolutely. Let's pull up the sectoral indices and we'll try and zoom in on some of the pain points that we saw today. Well, no gainers. We've seen the Nifty IT reverse that gain, but metal, PSU, energy, realty are probably the four places where there is pain. Among the larger ones, there's also auto, 2.5% lower. Let's pull up the Nifty metal because that one is absolutely beaten, 4% lower. And let's pull that up if we can in terms of constituents. And we did see both Tata Steel as well as some of the other, commodity on the Nifty 50, commodity names on the Nifty 50 take quite a beating. There you go, 5% lower on Tata Steel, but Jindal Stainless 6.5% lower. It's probably the second, third top loser on the Nifty mid cap. And you're seeing pain across the board, Hindalco, SAIL, as well as Hindustan Copper. The Nifty Energy, if we can, because we have the largest energy player, Reliance Industries, to come out with numbers. And you can see BPCL came out with numbers as well, down 4%. But otherwise, you're seeing pain across the board. Reliance closing the week at around 1.8% lower as we speak. That's where we've closed.
Just very quickly, the BSE 500 before we wrap up, and just that's the last chart that we'll show. And just to give you a sense of across the board what's corrected, even good numbers like Persistent got punished. Stocks like Cummins, ABB second day on a trot down in the session today. So that's the list of losers. Amber down 7%, Suven Pharma. Nothing was spared, Harsh.
Absolutely. Look at some of the gainers though, interesting ones. VST Industries flying away, 11.5% higher to close this week off. You have RVNL, which I'm not sure where this rally stops for some of these rail stocks. But of course, we have the budget coming up next week.
Most important union budget in many years, and all eyes will be on how the finance minister builds the road to Viksit Bharat.
We are working to make India a Viksit Bharat by 2047.
But not without a fair share of politics. Will there be a tilt towards populism? How will the finance minister balance between welfare, capex and fiscal discipline? We get you the most comprehensive news and views on budget impact for investments, the taxpayer and the economy. Ride the bullish India wave only on NDTV Profit.
Welcome, you're watching NDTV Profit, and in our pre-budget series, we're speaking to a large number of thinkers on what we should really expect from this budget. And we honestly need to go beyond just the brass tacks. What will be the fiscal deficit? What kind of capex numbers? Which sectors really make the most out of it? And these are things, of course, that we track. We look at, how markets will respond, etc. But in terms of a policy roadmap, what does this budget need to do, and why is this budget so crucial to set the stage not only for this fiscal year but for the next 5 years? And who better to speak on this than Manish Sabharwal, Vice Chairman of TeamLease, is with us. I think one of India's foremost thinkers when it comes to the jobs and employment part of the puzzle, and that really is the big one. So, Mr. Sabharwal, thank you so much for speaking with us here at NDTV Profit. Always a pleasure to have a conversation with you. And, I want to come straight to the point on why this budget will be watched particularly. Of course, it's coming after the elections, and the election results were not exactly what people were expecting. There was quite a message from the electorate, and one of those messages perhaps was that we as a nation need to create the jobs that people want, the jobs that give them a dignified life. Now, let me begin with that. Can the budget really do anything to move the needle, and what should it do?
The budget is a financial statement. It's not a statement of reform traditionally, or at least we have been hearing that from the FM in the last few years, that she wants to make reform a dial tone which happens through the year and not only at the budget. But I think the biggest gift the budget gives to the economy is macroeconomic stability. I think of the three big public goods, infrastructure, law and order, and macroeconomic stability, without which there can be no job creation, whether of the high wage kind or low wage kind. I think the budget is important in terms of recognizing that I think economists have oversold fiscal and monetary policy, right? Monetary policy is at best a placebo, a painkiller, or a steroid, and if fiscal deficits could make countries rich, then no country would be poor. But I think this budget becomes important because of people's misinterpretation of what happened in the elections. If people believe that election results weren't what they expected because welfareism at the top of people's minds, I don't think that is true. I think, welfareism, at least on state governments level, is running out of petrol. So my sense is that